panel of political experts to compare the manifestos of the two major political parties in Sierra Leone, the Sierra Leone People's Party, SLPP, and the All People's Congress, APC. The manifestos of the APC and the SLPP lay out their plans for the future of Sierra Leone. The election is just around the corner, and the stakes are high. Both parties have prioritized the economy, education, and job creation in their manifestos. They have both recognized the importance of tackling corruption and ensuring good governance. Both manifestos have highlighted the need to strengthen the economy, particularly by supporting the agriculture sector and promoting small and medium-sized enterprises. One of the biggest challenges facing Sierra Leone is youth unemployment. Both parties have recognized this and proposed various measures to address that, such as creating jobs in different areas, and tonight we'll explore that. But tonight we would look at the track records of both parties and explore their approach to deliver on their promises. My name is Samuel Wise-Bangro, and this is AYV on Sunday. Sunday tonight, we are comparing the two manifestos from the APC and the SLPP to see which of the two parties has the best plans for Sierra Leone. If we go into their manifestos. And like I mentioned earlier, tonight we have a star-studded panel of people who are in touch with the issues to help us unpack and shape the conversation for the next 2 hours. On my panel, I have Abdoulaye Berete. Abdoulaye Berete is a communications member at the Committee for pushing out, selling the policies of the APC for the 2023 campaign. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers and listeners.
Right, I have Cyril Djengo, a political economist, who is always welcome, and it's always a pleasure having you here. Cyril, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I have Honorable Ibrahim Tawa, a member, one of those vying for a seat under the proportional representation block system, but also a member of the communications team for the SLPP 2023 campaign team. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, viewers.
Well, we also have some members in the studio as live audience who would also help us to share their views on the two manifestos that we would be looking at. But those of you following us on all our different social media platforms, you have the opportunity to be part of the conversation. Share your thoughts, ask your questions, just drop them to the AYV News Facebook page, and we would find time to go through some of them when we shall be joining David and Wilson to read out some of them. But as always, we'll make a plea, ensure that you tailor your messages to the issues being discussed. Please tailor your messages to the issues being discussed. You know, individually, we've looked at both manifestos. We've assessed, we've analyzed the manifesto of the Sierra Leone People's Party. We've done same for the All People's Congress Party. And tonight, we want to compare. We want to see what do both manifestos have for Sierra Leoneans, and which of them lay out the best of plans for Sierra Leoneans to make an informed decision come June 24th. So I'm going to start off with you, Cyril, for obvious reasons. You've gone through both manifestos. Now, let me hear a precursory remark with regards to an assessment of what do you make of both manifestos, the APC and the SLPP.
Well, the manifestos of both parties were very interesting to read. You know, they both place the economy at the centerpiece of their arguments, that in fact the economy is bad. The government side and the APC side have admitted that the economy is bad, and they have put this human capital development and localized development in which we have in local investors being turned to the new capitalists as their benchmark for growth. But then what we are saying is that they are fine languages. The parties have very good writers. You know, they have very good economists. So, I mean, the documents are fantastically written. If I am to grade them, I think both have scored very high marks because on paper, we in Sierra Leone are very good intellectuals. They can write, they can express themselves. However, when you look at the reality, you know, for example, we have a case study now. We're doing a postmortem of the Sierra Leone People's Party. which is the governing party, we tend to wonder, where are we? Are we really both living in Sierra Leone in terms of the promises that I see in the SLPP party's manifesto? When you look at that and the economy they have run, you are really wondering whether there should be promises or whether they should be explaining to us why the economy is failing. On the side of the APC, you see them taking the bull by the horn, that we know the solutions. We can solve the problem. We can ensure that the economy is brought to its a stronger stand, you know. And then you wonder, but where were you in the last 10 years, you know? Because you had the chance to do these miracles, to create the economic field, I mean, to empower people and create local investments. Where have you been? So, fine languages, fine words, but in reality, we have to justify. And that's why I am here, to sort of see how they could put flesh, put reality to these very fine languages that we've seen in their party manifestos.
Let's get to it. Let's start off. Because of time, we're going to look at 3 critical areas in the manifestos. We're going to look at the economy, human capital development, and employment. These are crucial areas. So we're going to start off with human capital investment. And now, for example, on the screen right now, the APC is saying accelerate investments in our people with a specific focus on the capabilities of our children, women, and youth. We shall enhance efficient and equitable social spending, elevating the quality and explicitly caring for the most vulnerable segments of our population, women, including youth, and people with disabilities. And the SLPP is saying human capital development, nurturing skills for 21st century industry. Inclusive economic growth relies on skilled and educated human capital. In the next 5 years, the SLPP government will invest in developing the technical and vocational skills required to grow the economy, focusing particularly on creating equal opportunity for women. We will invest in health systems to develop a healthy and capable workforce for a 21st century economy. I'm going to start off with the party that is seeking to unseat the SLPP. Abdullah Beritin. Accelerate investments in our people with a specific focus on the capabilities of our children, women, and youth. What's the thinking?
Thank you very much, Sam and White. For us as a party, our One Nation manifesto is very clear. When the economy is in dire straits, when the youth population, which according to the United Nations, about 60% of our population is youth, then you start to wonder, where are we in terms of bringing on board the young people in the national agenda for sustainable development? We have seen the type of education we have here, which is mostly the white-collar jobs. How do we make sure to create a middle power economy whereby technical, vocational education will benefit our young people, even if they go to Frobe College, they graduate with, say, political science, but yet still, how do you make sure that when they come out, there will be employment for them? That is where you can diversify the education, invest in technical education and vocational enterprises. That way, those new skills could be learned by our young people. Then they can fit into the economy. In essence, it is providing a type of education that will empower the young people so that you can match them with job creation. And that job creation cannot just be limited locally. This is where when you are even attracting direct foreign investment, our party should be able to align, to align the aspirations, the job opportunities, whereby people can come and intervene in the economy. And how do we do that? Look at the marine industry, look at agriculture, look at even the mineral sector. when you create the skills, I remember there was a time when African minerals was at its boom. Even drivers will have to be imported from Senegal. So the question then is, where are our own local people, particularly the young people, that can fill in those key technical areas? And this is where Dr. Samura Kamara has made it abundantly clear that for us to move with the two-tier type of education, don't get me wrong, academia and education is not just for employment. Sometimes it is also an enlightenment. That way people can contribute to the political space in the state.
Taking a step back and taking a cue from what Cyril Django mentioned, looking at the track record, I have a letter written by the late Minister of Education, Dr. Minkai Luba, and in his words, education, and this letter was written to the registrar at Frobe College, one of the 3 constituent colleges of the University of Sierra Leone, that education is in a sorry state of affairs. And now you've mentioned clearly that we should not just focus on that aspect. We were at a point in time in this country when we experienced economic boom with the African minerals. But then you also just mentioned that our own Sierra Leoneans were not equipped to have occupied all of those jobs. So we had to import even drivers. So where did we go wrong that we would not, we are looking now at the APC, that we did not get it right? What happened? That at that point, we are unable to look and equip our young people and give them the required skills to have gotten a platform where today we'll be talking about something different. So what's the level of trust that the APC will deliver on this promise?
For us, our manifesto has transcended being a mere promise. It has graduated into being a commitment and also a real manifesto for the people. And when we launched it on May the 29th this year, Dr. Samura Kamara was very clear that, you know what, this manifesto is a collective agenda for sustainable development, which means we are striving, working with the young people so that they can be, their voices could be heard in the development trajectory and agenda. It is one thing to just come and impose on them that this is the prescription for you for economic growth. Where did we go wrong as a nation? Where are we right now? You can see the progressive agendas we made during our last 10 years of governance before 2018, whereby you can see our intentional interventions in the economy vis-a-vis empowering education for the young people, vocational institutions being supported in this country. And that is what we want to leverage on as a nation. Because don't forget, when you talk about even the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which Sierra Leone is committed to, this is where we think we have somebody who is not just a politician, but a technocrat who is very much au fait with how to intervene in the economy to reverse the abysmal performances right now, which is stifling job creation for particularly the young people. That is why our manifesto, prior to putting it together, when we intervene, we interview the young people. What do they want? Then we are very clear. We don't tire with push. We want real jobs, and this is the menace. Right now you can see young people, when you go to public spaces, you'll see them virtually collapsing like zombies. And the question is, why is it that they have been attractive to the kush and other illicit drugs compared to creating jobs for them? And this is where our own agenda is. Make sure the development agenda, the young people, their voices are also incorporated. That way, they can also take responsibility.
Honorable Ibrahim Tawa, human capital development nurturing skills for 21st century industry. You're in power. You had 5 years. So first off, let's talk about what's the thinking behind this particular proposal that you're making?
We have a benchmark. Our records are straight and clear. Our performance is for all to see, visible. When we inherited governance in 2018, that was like a year prior to the Constitutional Review Committee handing their reports to the former presidents, when in their recommendation under education, they recommended that government remove the phrase in paragraph C of subsection 2 of section 9, as and when practicable, to finance free secondary education. Government rejected that recommendation to remove that proviso as and when practicable on the basis that it would be due to availability of financial resources, which means that the government at the time, the APC, even though resources was available for them to cut away, but resources was not available to finance and fund the future of this country. That is first. Second, you would also realize that in the APC's manifesto, the Agenda for Prosperity, documented between 2012 and 2018, President Nkrumah deliberately promised in page 62 that in order to transform education, he will launch by the end of 2018, his government would succeed in education transformation by launching a free primary, fee-based education system. All of that they could not achieve. In 6 months, between April and September, President Biu inherited the same governance structure, a governance structure that was struggling with domestic revenue mobilization. Domestic revenue mobilization was at 11%. A governance structure that was also heavily indebted. A governance structure that was struggling with expenditure management. But it launched boldly the free quality education, and between September of 2018, at the time of the launch of the free quality education, to July of 2019, Sierra Leone has seen a mammoth increase in enrollment, 671,000 Sierra Leonean children from across the country that were not opportune to go to school had to be enrolled because of the free quality education. Secondly, if you look at the education success of President Nkrumah, detailed and read in the valedictory speech in Parliament, you realize that 4 paragraphs of his speech was based on increased enrollment in pre-primary, increased enrollment in primary, increased enrollment in junior secondary, increased enrollment in senior secondary. Between 2018 to 2023, Sierra Leone has seen an increase. When President Biu inherited government, the total number of children in school were about 1.1 million. Today, we have 3,131,000 Sierra Leonean children in school. And those 3,131,000 children are being paid for by the government of Sierra Leone. This government has also provided school bus services to children across this country, decentralized school bus services given to councils, given to district councils. This government has paid fees for WAS, Becker, and NPSC alone between 2018 and 2022 to the tune of 167 billion. This government has given 11,454 children, in fact students, in the university scholarship, worth about 57,200,000,000 leones in fees. This government has granted scholarship to 4,537 Sierra Leonean children studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And of that number, 2,300 and plus are women. So what we are saying,
with all of these statistics, you're giving us, now the party is saying in the next 5 years, the SLPP government will invest in developing the technical and vocational skills required to grow the economy, focusing particularly on creating equal opportunity for all, including women. Now, let's go. Your government separated the ministries of education with the focus of building the middle manpower. And now, if you are promising that again for the next 5 years, could it mean in the last 5 years you failed?
What we are saying in the manifesto is that in the last 5 years, what we've been doing majorly in terms of building a middle level manpower, firstly is to build up infrastructure. Remember, it was under President Bio that we have now launched a proper civic education system, mainstream into our education system. It was all promised in the last 10 years. Yeah, it was under President Bio that we have seen in the 16 districts, we have 11, Bo, Pujaum, Tonkolili, Koinadugu, as the case may be, right across, Masingbi, Kono, where we have technical vocational structures now in existence and functional. That was never the case. So you cannot build a technical vocational infrastructure that is capable to meet the 21st century needs and to ensure that we mainstream the middle manpower to achieve our overall objective of being a middle income country by 2035 without having the infrastructure. So firstly was the infrastructure has never been there for the last 10 years. It has always been a white elephant discussion, a discussion that covers no infrastructure. But however, it was part of the manifesto of the APC. So what we have done in the last 5 years is building the infrastructure, setting the policy, getting the process right, and starting the process. Now, if you look at the separation of the two ministries, today we have 3 technical universities. We have the Mitimagai Technical University, we have the Eastern Technical University, and we have the Kono University of Science. These 3 universities are mainly focusing outside the TVET structure that has been established at this state level. They are mainly focusing on building middle manpower. For example, at Mitimagai, now we have professional courses in masonry, we have professional courses in carpentry, and they've improved the structure on garage tie dyeing and the likes. So what we are saying, unlike what my uncle said, that in 2011, 2012, 2013, when our economy was hitting 21% growth, we have to rely on bringing drivers from China. So now, because places like Mitimagai, the separation of the ministry has shown clearly that the infrastructure, the capacity at technical level was not there. Now we are restoring it. So places like Mitimagai are now rolling out this type of education.
All right.
So we have professional drivers and we have youths that have been trained under the youth service schemes that are operating heavy duty trucks, either heavy duty trailers, either excavators, bulldozers, rollers. These were not there before.
All right.
So now most of the operators at CSC and the construction companies are Sierra Leonean.
Let me bring in Cyril Django. You've listened to the 2 political parties. They've submitted arguments why both parties feel that they have the best proposals for the people of this country, and why the people of this country should choose either of them come June 24th. Now, from what both of them have submitted on the issue of investing in our people, where do you think we've gotten it wrong over time?
Well, you know, Beriti and Ibrahim have made fantastic submissions here, you know, especially the one coming from the Sierra Leone People's Party side, in which he is categorically making clear mentions of their achievements. You know, I cannot dispute or deny those achievements, but I'm saying the reality seems to be different from what he is painting as an objective analyst on this panel.
In what sense?
Because when you look at quality education and its vibrancy, you would expect one thing, that public servants who are well paid and earning very well should be able to have their kids experience public schools. But despite all of these fantastic statements that we're seeing, this government has a large number of their own people having their kids in private schools, and many of them are out there studying in private colleges. So you have to admit that while you're making these fantastic statements of empowering the youth, of tech voc, the reality is that the resources are not there. There are bare minimum resources to empower the learning ability of these young people. Now let's talk about Mr. Beriti. He was very forceful on job creation for the youths, that the youths are going to have jobs instead of kush, that they're tired of kush. Yes, but again, the APC can achieve those if they are actually meaning to achieve them. However, when you look at the past record of the APC with the youths, what we saw is where this handout, these cash handouts, where the president would make it a habit of, instead of creating investment tools, empowering the youth, rather see them and his ministers in the APC then giving handout to the Kada guys, the Keke guys. We think that the APC has to go beyond these handouts to come up with a systematic, well thought out youth agenda that would ensure that tech folk that you spoke about are effectively being used and are well resourced. So the handout is a key problem of your own economy towards the youths. How are you going to make this handout become a thing of the past, such that you are providing the industrial level support that they need? And mindful, Samuel, and I should say this, while we're looking at the manifesto here, we have an argument rolling across that this election will not be on the basis of the manifesto of the man on my left, the Southern People's Party, or on the basis of the manifesto of the man on my right, the APC. They are saying, and I very much watch this debate, that the election will be decided on one critical factor,
which is
the tribalization and visualization of political entitlements. What do I mean? That in fact this election is a census of regional blocks, not necessarily on the economy, because if it were on the economy, I can assure you Samuel Kamara should be having a sound sleep with his own agenda, because the economy, as we are now, has failed. But the vibrancy that we see in the electorate is one of protecting their regions, their tribes, their clans. And that is the enthusiasm that we see being injected into the system.
Has any political party in this country won a national election with just the support of its tribal kingsmen?
I can assure you that in 2002, this very Freetown was a green zone for Tijan Kaba after he brought in the peace.
Right.
In fact, the APC were soundly defeated. So I can tell you, we had developed a culture of looking at policies, which means the end of the war was a major boost in which President Kaba won, I think, first rounds, right, not in the second rounds. But however, the economy
and
is
with over
not,
70%.
Yes, it's exactly that. Yeah. So the economy is not at the forefront. The manifestos are byproducts. The real thing we're going to assess, and I will be among them, is, are these analysts really talking sense that forget the economy?
We will come to them. We will come to them.
Okay.
Let me quickly ask again, Bill. Now, the issue of investments, how you plan to invest in the people, changing the narrative of education over time, where for many of us, we've always celebrated certification over education, forgetting what real education is all about. And that's the education we've gotten in this country for the longest of time. The question now is, what would be the approach of the APC, and how would you mobilize resources to fund that aspect of investing, usually in our people?
I want first to agree with the Django that the economy of this country has failed the people of this nation.
We would look to the economy.
But I will already disagree with him that this elections is about just ethnicity and regionalism. Okay. The economy is key, and one way we can invest in terms of job creation for the young people is to make sure how do we diversify the economy so that we'll be able to put a certain percentage of the resources towards a youth fund that will create employment for these young people. And how do you do that? Right now, if you look at the export base of this country, it is nearly zero. We depend on importation with all the hard currency. Whereby if you want to really invest in people and the young folks, how do you create employment in, let's say, agriculture for them, so that you reduce the dependency syndrome? How do you create in the marine sector? How do you create in tourism? This is where you can see with all the proliferation of schools of tourism and travel, etc., how many people are graduating from there and become employable. So for us, even when this government came to say, you know what, one incentive will be to pay for application forms at the university, at the tertiary level, that never came to fruition. Why? Because it is a disincentive for people. And today, if you look at the astronomical cost of students going into university and other tertiary institutions, it is just prohibitive. So for us, you tackle the economy in such a way, you put a certain percentage, say 20%, into job creation for young people. But in all of this, do not treat the youth as clienteles. Make sure you incorporate their voices, their needs, so that they can be part of the solution. That way it becomes empowering for them, and when it succeeds, it can be collective, because that is a strategy for us to wedge the division in the country so that it cannot be seen it is us versus the young people. But when you incorporate them in the development trajectory, that way you can create jobs and employment for them. And this is where I also want to articulate. During the 10 years we are in governance, we increased enrollment in the universities, for instance, because we are subsidizing some disciplines in universities. We will subsidize over 50% in terms of tuition. Some disciplines, like medical school, we will even subsidize over 60 to 70%. That is one way you invest in the young folks. That way they can complete. And for me, it is not just the mass production of students to say we have 1 million students right now. When I looked at the tertiary institutions conducting entrance examinations, when you look at the rate of people who pass to enter after they went through WASC, then you realize to say, where is the quality in all of this mass education that we are talking about?
What would you do different?
What we'll do different is you strengthen the educational system, whereby you can see it is not just through mass promotions. You will want to make sure when people want to enter university, if they have a B plus or an A in the WASC, when they go into the entrance exams, they should also be able to qualify and not be driven out of the university in terms of dropouts. I think that is a disconnect.
All right. Honorable Ibrahim Tawa, the question is, how would you go about this huge investment in human capital that would nurture skills for the 21st century? And where would we generate the funds?
We'll come to the economy, but before coming to the economy, we'll see that either party, the mode of financing education and every other budgetary vote comes from the budget and international and private sector funding. Now look at education. What have we been able to do in terms of what the APC wants to advocate? They say they are going to advocate to get more international and regional partners helping into financing education. As we speak now, Sierra Leone's president is co-chair with the United Nations Secretary General on human capital development, principally because of the giant leap that Sierra Leone has taken above all other countries, mostly in Africa, in terms of rolling out and in terms of mastering human capital development, particularly education. As we speak, Sierra Leone's Minister of Education is the Vice President of the Global Partnership in Education, which has given Sierra Leone the biggest support ever in terms of the GPE supporting a country, one country. So it shows that the progress that Sierra Leone has made over the years is recognized by partners, by patrons, and by the private sector. So leveraging on that image and those progress and the successes we've made in education, we are going to mobilize additional resources to ensure, like we have now. Over the last 3 years, President Bio constructed and handed over about 1,000 classrooms. Majority, 80% of that 1,000 classrooms was financed by either the European Union, by the World Bank, by GPE, and by private sector development in Sierra Leone, Mercury and the others, which shows the government's posture on education, human capital, is attracting the attention of partners. So mobilizing resources for education already, there is a roadmap. That is one. Secondly, budgetary-wise, we allocated for the first time. Sierra Leone's budget has been hovering around 13 to 15% on education. The declaration, the Abuja declaration was 20%. We've gone above that. We are 22%. I saw in the APC manifesto that, they are allocating 22%, but they're only disbursing 18%. It is never new in this country. Yeah? In terms of budget allocation and disbursement, because the resource ticket is to finance other sectors. But however, we've been able to ensure that we allocate 22% to pay fees, to school materials, to financing education. So budgetary allocation, we are going to use budgetary allocation to support these activities because we realize, like I said, they were subsidizing the universities. Even though they were giving subsidies on paper, the monies were not paid to the universities. We had to come and pay those monies. That is why today, what the BO government has done is to disaggregate the university financial structure. The government has taken the payment of all lecturers, subsumed it into the consolidated revenue fund. So what we have now is that lecturers are being paid directly from the government coffers, and they have seen a 75% increment in their salaries, which means monies collected by the university is only meant for running university. So whilst we have paid the subsidies that they don't pay, we have ensured that the university has the financial standing to run itself. Meanwhile, their major costs, which was salaries and emoluments to lecturers, have been absorbed by government. That is a smart way of subsidizing the universities without saying, I'm giving you subsidies on paper, but you don't have the money. So for us, at university level, we have structured the university to a point that we've received several tranches of support from the World Bank and African Development Bank to continue to improve on the infrastructure of Ntimagai from Badia, to continue to strengthen the Eastern Technical University. Those are the financing model we are going to continue with because it is expanding on the transformation.
Cyril, you've listened to both gentlemen. Abdullah Berete is saying they have to make the economy work. And when the economy works, they would be able to put some percentage aside for the investments in education. Honorable Tawa is saying already they have a pathway for the fundings for education and human capital development. They have private sector, international partners. They've already committed because they've been helping, owing to the fact that the president and the basic education minister occupy enviable positions at the global stage. Which one is more smart?
Well, I am going to vote, so this is a very good time for me to be making up my mind, you know. Tawa, this is the man anyway who we've known at least the man who has a conscience in parliament. So nice knowing you physically. Well, he's given very fantastic analysis there of their progress. But if I am to judge his very well put analysis, I would say he is hinging on this development on a very superficial level of success, which is that of donor support. If you listen to him very carefully, he is making a consistent reference to donor support, which is what we do not need, because donor support does have its major problems when it comes to the global economy. This government has been largely pushed by the international donor community. The schools you mentioned, the subsidies, have been largely financed by the EU, the World Bank, like you've said. When are we going to have a localized investment in which the people of Sierra Leone, which you're talking about there, are empowered economically to be able to access loans, credits, and create employment? Because this consistent reference to donor support has been there since 1961. And where are we? So I would expect that Mr. Tawa should be making us know what are we doing to own up to our own core national issues on education, on checkbook. What are we doing? What are we earning? Because we are only allowing ourselves to be used by the international system when they so fit. Okay, let's come to Abdullah. He's also very, very powerful. You know, he's also very, very convincing on his analysis in support to the universities, to students, and all of it. What I want to ask him really, what was the APC doing in 10, 11 years that we are still where we are, and yet we're having these fantastic promises from him that there will be a difference? How can I be assured that you're really going to make a difference when it comes to the next time round? That's for you.
And if I may respond to that.
Just so you do not use up my powers because I'm taking time into consideration. Thank you very much. Let's move on. We're taking time into consideration. Thank you, Cyril. Let's look at the economy. Now, the APC is saying address economic deficiencies and the cost of living crisis at the structural level. And we shall restore macroeconomic stability and work towards transforming Sierra Leone from a consumption to a competitive production economy. This will include prioritizing private sector development, particularly indigenous businesses and rural communities, leveraging the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and other trade agreements, and harnessing the potentials of digital transformation. The SLPP is saying Feed Saloon, an initiative to boost agricultural productivity to ensure food security and inclusive economic growth. President Bio's top priority in his second term is for Sierra Leone to be food self-sufficient. The next SLPP government will boost agricultural productivity by increasing investment, which will fuel inclusive economic growth, boost food production, reduce hunger and poverty, create jobs, boost export earnings, and build our resilience in the face of climate change. Abdullah Bereti, address economic deficiencies and the cost of living crisis at the structural level. How?
The APC is very clear when it comes to addressing the economy. Right now, our economy is what I can say a very collapsing economy. And the reasons and signs are very clear. I don't need to go to Frobe College on any economics 101 to know that. Just go down to Dovecourt, ask for a piece of onion. It's 5,000 leones. You ask for 4 pieces of carrot, it's 20,000 leones. You ask for a bag of rice right now in this country, it will be at between 670,000 to 850,000 leones. Palm oil is between 11,000 a pint to 13,000 a pint. The people are suffering in this country. There is a direct introduction of 2 denominations of our currency in the economy, thereby reducing consumer confidence in this country. The dollar to the Leone has plummeted to the point that the government has gone beyond solutions, as admitted by the then bank governor, who said, you know what, I have no solutions of what is going on. All we saw him will be in the Caribbean. For us as a country, we should be able to promote what we call balance of trade. How do you make sure you bring in investment in the economy to such that you pump in the marine industry, fisheries, tourism, and agriculture? That way we can reduce the dependency syndrome in terms of importation. Because once your economy is based on importation with less fiscal discipline, automatically there will be a demand on supply forces, whereby people will be rushing to convert the local currency to the international denomination, the dollar, because that is the means of international trade and finance. How do you make sure you even reduce the president's overseas travel? Because whenever he leaves this country, either in chartered flights, etc., it is costing us a lot of money in terms of foreign exchange. And how do we make sure we get accountability in governance? And this is where you don't only empower your local. We introduced the local content policy, whereby we try to revamp the economy using the proceeds locally. But what happened? When this government came, I remembered, prior to 2018, they accused the APC of being spenders like drunken sailors. Well, today, I'll remove the simile of like. They are drunken sailors, the way they have managed this economy. And for us, we want to make sure, how do we promote and attract direct foreign investment? And that foreign investment is not to promote the dependency syndrome, but rather confined to the local content of our country, whereby when you bring in investment, there should be internal growth to develop small-scale businesses.
Should Sierra Leoneans trust the APC with this promise? At a time when we experienced an economic boom, we could not save for the rainy day when we also experienced an economic bust in this country. To the point, we saw the APC implemented 22 austerity programs aimed at saving recurrent expenditure of about 309 billion at the time. And until today, I'm sure no Sierra Leonean, well, except for those in power or those of you who were in power, would know how much was saved. So with that record, should Sierra Leoneans trust that the APC can fix the economy?
Absolutely, and there is evidence to the effect. I remembered when President Bio came into governance in 2018, he was very categorical that in 6 months' time, they will fix this economy. And that didn't happen. So it was even an insult when I heard them saying that they give Sierra Leoneans in quotes bonya because they have achieved almost everything on their previous manifesto. And we also had the chief minister. He was on one of the local radio stations appealing to Sierra Leoneans that, you know what, if you entrust us with the economy, we'll fix it in 3 months' time. I can imagine in 5 years, you promised to fix it in 6 months, including the introduction of investment in this country, simplistic like a bakery, which never materialized. For us, though, what do? You make sure you bring in, the first thing is the security tax you pay at the airport that the Suma people introduced. We are going to abolish that, because that is inhibiting tourism flow in this country, so boost the economy. And secondly, you diversify the economy. You diversify it, that way you reduce the importation and look at internal growth, which is very key. And there will be an advisory committee, because for us, we believe in consultations. Bring in the local businesses, the private sector, work with the international partners as well. That way, our growth can be internally generated. I agree with you, we introduced economic rationalization measures. And we all knew the World Bank published a report following the Ebola, whereby they said Sierra Leone lost a chunk of money compared to Liberia and Sierra Leone. Why was that? Because at that time, our economy was the second largest in the world, second only to Macau. And it was able to translate into the lives of the people by the social services we introduced. For instance, when we rolled out the free healthcare initiative in 2010, it was very obvious we are able to finance it. And that introduction didn't just come from the blues. What happened? We did an empirical research. One of the prestigious health magazines in the UK, Lancet, even came with an op-ed to say, you know what? If any country that is to address the health challenges in Sierra Leone, they should emulate the free healthcare initiative introduced by the Nkrumah government. And this is the way you tackle the economy. Today, if you look from 2018 to now, you look at the GDP growth rate in our country. According to the Network Solutions, it was very clear. The Sustainable Development Network Solutions, it said Sierra Leone is one of the most unhappy country in the world. And it is obvious. Right. Look at our GDP growth rates right now. And this is where, for us, we'll make sure you diversify the economy, you remove instantly the two currency in circulation, which has undermined consumer confidence in this country, and of course, the de-dollarization of the economy. That way you can look at internal growth, and you don't have to spend. This government has created. The paradox in their manifesto is, when they came in, they challenged the APC that our government was bloated. But it is on record, they created 6 new ministries and also 24 new agencies, which created bloated the wage bill. And today, just last week, the IMF even came in to salvage the economy by pumping in about $20 million as part of a credit facility. Why is that so? Because they said, if not, they will not be able to even pay salaries. So that is where we are as a nation.
Honorable Ibrahim Tawa, Feed Salon, an initiative to boost agricultural productivity to ensure food security and inclusive economic growth. Why are you prioritizing this?
Well, if you look at us as a government, when we say we prioritize, we succeed. But before talking about how we prioritize and how we succeed, it is also wise that Sierra Leoneans understand exactly how the economy works. That the economy is not an event, it's a process. Thank God there is a learned economist here. It is not an event. It does not start and finish. It is a process that starts somewhere, and it will run to a certain track, like a 5,000 meter across the same track where you would complete a 400 meter race. My uncle speaks of the IMF coming to pump in money, which shows that the economy was collapsing. Let me tell viewers, let them know that between 2019 to date, we have reduced our debts by a significant chunk.
What's the percentage?
Currently, our absolute debt figure is about 2.8 billion. It was 3 billion in the last 1 year, which shows that the economy is working. Between 2012, 13 and 14, the Sierra Leone export GDP was running at a rate of 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 billion dollars. By the time Mamadou Kagbo read his last budget in Parliament, Sierra Leone export GDP has dropped from 1.5 billion in 2014 to $475 million. Today, our export GDP is $875 million, which shows that economic diversification is working. That which did not work during the APC. Let me also look at the parable or the dream in Egypt of the king that dreamt 7 fat corns swallowing 17 corns and 7 fat cows swallowing. When the dream was interpreted, it says there is going to be a day, there is going to be a 7-year period of bounty, of plenty. But what did they do? During the 7-year period of bounty and plenty, they make sure that they reserve for the period, for the rainy period. Our economy was only second to Macau. When Ebola struck, our economy, the gains reversed in 6 months, went to minus 21%, which shows it was not sustainable. There was no sustainability in the plans of the APC. And those plans were led by a certain Dr. Samora Matthew Wilson Kamara, who was the Minister of Finance, leading the financial sector. By the time the APC left, economic growth was projected economic growth was 3.5%. Today, our economic growth, current economic growth, is 3.5% and projected at 5.6%, which shows that consistently we are moving. Our budget deficit is reducing. Our dependency, like he said, on donors has also reduced, because when we came, we met domestic revenue to GDP at 11%. When COVID was not there, we took it between 2018 to 2020 to about 15%, which shows that majority of government activities, be it infrastructure, be it on education, be it on the environment, was financed principally by the budget. So when we say we are going to deliver on agriculture, if you look at our record, when President Nkrumah read his valedictory speech, he said the APC government had supported 1,900 farmer-based organizations. So if we say each farmer-based organization consists of 5 members with 25 million, between 20 to 25 million, let's say they were given 25 million. So it means each farmer-based organization with 5 members benefited 5 million. In 5 years, President Bio has deposited from the budget 60 billion at Coquel Commercial Bank for transparent usage for farmers to collect credits, not paid credits, grants in fact, grants to ensure that they are supported with agricultural inputs, with fertilizers. So it means if you give 5,000 farmers 60 billion. At least each farmer will get 12 million to support them. Additionally, in these 5 years, we have been able to mobilize through private sector $10 million credits that was given to our farmers at single digit interest rates, which shows that what we have done in the last 5 years has not only shown, but what President Nkrumah reported. He said between 2007 and 2016, our rice per metric ton production was 600,000 metric ton. When they were leaving, it was 1 million metric tons, which means in 10 years, they only added 400,000 metric tons. What we have done in 2022 alone, because of the deliberate policy by President Bill to begin to phase in agriculture with education, in 2022 alone, our local rice production was 900,000 metric tons. That is 22% increase in just 1 year. So what is going to do, in addition to the 410 power tillers, tractors, rice miller, the stoners that he has bought already that are functional, we are going to increase the budget reallocation to agriculture. That is deliberate local financing means. This is not the private sector mobilization. We are going to increase the budget to 10%. And when we increase the budget to 10%, to show that we are serious, by the closure of the 5th Parliament, we've passed into law the Slurry Act. The President has signed it, which would give additional funding capacity to Slurry to conduct research and to ensure that we have the right input in the right soil. In addition, we are going to ramp up our investment in cash crop, because if you look at Sierra Leone and Ivory Coast, we are both net importers of rice, even though Ivory Coast imports more rice than Sierra Leone. But because of the model they're using, their export of their cocoa gives them more foreign currency retention to offset their import of rice. Like I said, the balance of trade. Our balance of trade has always been in deficit. That is because we have not done proper retention of our foreign currency. If you go to Guinea, in Guinea is the 3rd largest exporter of bauxite in the world. And what they do, every mining company in Guinea, the government owns 49%, which means every export, the government is able to retain 90% of its foreign currency. What we have done as the government now, we have passed into law the Mines and Mineral Development Corporation Act of 2023, which will give the government of Sierra Leone the mandate to set up an SPV that will create a mining infrastructure, not just mining, on other government infrastructure that we are going to invest in, and the monies from the export will be retained that will offset the balance of trade and also reduce the foreign exchange deficits. Let me give you one figure.
With all of these variables, looking at the fiscal and monetary adjustments, the gains and the challenges, you promised the people of this country that in 6 months you were going to fix the economy. It's 5 years. Have you fixed it?
Maybe it's a lapsi lingua. You cannot fix an economy that was on austerity. Let me tell you, in economics, the economy system.
And by the way, you also implemented economic rationalization plans, the very ones where you asked ministries not to go out of their conference rooms when they have programs.
That was in the beginning, when we took up governance.
Twice. You also asked ministers not to travel except if those trips are essential. So where did we go wrong in the last 5 years in fixing the economy?
In the last 5 years, like I said, if you look at the economy, the economic trajectory, we inherited an inflation figure of 17% when the last budget was read as at September. By 2019, by 2020, inflation was down to about 10.5%, which shows the economy was working. But like they noted in their manifesto, the One Nation, the cost of living is a serious crisis across the world. You've been part of the global village, and when COVID struck, even the wisest of nations did not know what to do. Everybody locked down. And Sierra Leone being a net importer of everything. Imagine Brazil, Pakistan, Thailand, Vietnam, where Sierra Leone imports its rice from, are all in lockdown. What would that mean for Sierra Leone? It means you have to implement prudent financial policies. So what President Mio did was to invest $50 million in supporting businesses in Sierra Leone to ensure that the pressure, the cost on importing rice would not affect the Sierra Leoneans directly, even though rice price is high in Sierra Leone, but it is the cheapest in the sub-region. Go to tradingeconomics.com. You will see that in Guinea, even though their currency is stable, rice is 1.5 million Sierra Leone currency. In Senegal, rice is about almost 2 million. Thank God the attaché from Senegal is part of our audience. He will confirm. So it means the deliberate investment of this government in finance, in pre-financing both the OMC, the oil marketing companies, and the rice importers has shown us, because Sierra Leoneans would have been in a dire economic situation had it not been for those deliberate policies.
Let's listen to Cyril Django, the umpire. Cyril,
I am still.
this is your area.
Now, I want to specifically come into the issue of Tower. You know, I see you reading a lot of things there. You know, but I'm talking about the reality on the ground. The reality is that inflation is a major disaster in this country. And if it were true that all of these things you've been doing for the economy are actually working, then I think we should have a measurable impact on inflation. Mind you, Liberia, George Weah, President Weah, is saying in his message to Parliament in January that he has successfully reduced inflation from 30% to 7%, and we're all in the same global economy. Now, in making mention of this Ukraine and whatever, the question is, how can you make mention of Ukraine and Russia when Ukraine is still exporting a huge quantum of grain? Ukraine is still a major player in the global economy. Russia and Ukraine are also exporting. And then there we are seeing Liberia making fantastic progress in reducing inflation. And we are having a major, last year, when you compare the Leone to the dollar, it was merely 10,000 Leones to $1. And this year, same time, you see a massive discrepancy. And then when you look at the campaigning of the government itself, it's campaigning, it's not on a message of what we're doing to ensure we reduce this inflationary trend that is impacting on salaries. It's much more about a dancing spree. I mean, a spree of dancing and jubilation, for which I still stress that if this election were about the economy, I think it's a massive failure. But if it's about a tribal census, a regional protection, then I think it's a major issue. Now, let me turn to Verity. He was raising a very fantastic points here when you're talking about empowering a local sector, building a local middle-class base. Sierra Leone does not have a middle-class base. What we have is a political middle class, one in which when they come to power, they have the wealth, they have the businesses, they control the best sectors of the economy. We cannot continue to survive in that kind of political economy where it's only the political class who are building up. Because when they crash, the economy crash. We are looking at your policy of how you are going to ensure we have a genuine middle class that has access to credits that can, of course, be able to produce for the economy. Because you also mentioned about that we are basically importing much more than we're exporting, and that you guys are going to ensure we develop a local entrepreneurial base to be able to live on to the economy. But I think that so far so good. We have to accept one fact, that Sierra Leone's economy is not going to develop if we continue to develop a political middle class.
You have a fair idea of literally what the SLPP is doing with the economy right now and how you've assessed that. If we are to talk about the 11 years reign of the APC, where would you put that assessment? I mean, looking at whether or not the APC will deliver on the economy.
Now, to be very fair, I'm not going to prejudge those who are viewing us or listening. If you look at the trajectory of the economy in the last 15 years, that is 10 years APC and 5 years, you would say that the APC had a much more firm grip on the economy, but they were not the friends of the IMF and World Bank. Because remember, just before the elections in 2018, the IMF systematically announced that they were stopping all support to the APC governments. By November of that same year, they had come back under the Mother B government that we are going to support you. And in fact, fact, this year, we've seen, even at the dying throes, even towards the elections, they are still supporting the Sierra Leone People's Party.
Is that a show of
government.
confidence or what?
Well, to the loan of $20 million, because remember, 2018, around March, April, the IMF said they're stopping all support to the APC because they have failed to remove subsidies on fuel and rice. But here now we're seeing that the geopolitics and the economic is that the West would prefer the Sierra Leone People's Party to win because the APC is seemingly much more aligned to the Chinese model, to the Chinese style of developments. Because as you know, Samuel, you were here, when at the heat of the campaigns, who did we see campaigning for the APC? So let us hope that the next government is going to help us in providing a correct, genuine middle class and stop this political middle class that is always there, collecting and grabbing the economy of Sierra Leone.
All right.
I just want
Yes,
to
quickly, I'll allow you. Go on.
Honorable Tawa made some very outlandish statements in terms of the export base they are doing, and later he contradicted himself that there is no balance of trade. And he quoted some figures about our GDP. Mm-hmm. I just want to know the GDP, the consumer prices in this country, 15.3% in 2017, and it came to 42.7% in February of this year. And when you look at our GDP in 2017, including the 5 years of the SLPP, it was 69%. And today, it is almost 95% in 2022. So this tells you, when we talk about a balance of trade, it is how do you ensure, even in political economy terms, how do you make sure that you develop your export base so that you don't have to rely your economy on the importation of goods and services? And this is where our own blueprint is. How do we make sure we diversify the economy so that there is a dissenting for the importation of goods and services? Because once you want to import, you are going to convert your local currency into the international financial currency, which is the US dollar. And Django mentioned that the international community, because APC was leaning to the Chinese, we also, and that the West would prefer the SLPP. If that, I can go with that hypothesis. We are relying on Sierra Leoneans because Sierra Leoneans know that the SLPP has failed this country. The economy is in a terrible shape. There is massive corruption, which is a real terrible situation compared to where they met this country. And of course, even Tawa seated here, I sympathized with him at one point when in Parliament. He was very clear when he even came out very boldly and indicted Parliament that there was massive corruption in Parliament. And beyond that, when in 2020, they wanted to pass the carte blanche check that the president, the vice president, and the speaker, they should not be audited. They can use our money free for all, like a bonanza. He was one of those who vociferously came to challenge that. And we also saw, as part of correcting this economy, state institutions that will drive corruption, that will make sure we get fiscal discipline. We don't have to remove an auditor general and impose a new one who will say, you know what, we are not going to audit the office of the president because it didn't reach the threshold. What is the threshold? Sierra Leoneans want to know, and that is why Sierra Leoneans are going to kick out the SLPP.
Honorable Tawa, quickly.
Can I firstly talk on the issue of balance of trade for the layman to understand? Balance of trade is the difference between your total imports minus your total exports, or your total exports minus your total imports. That will give you your net balance of trade. Like he said, he quoted some fine figures. If you look at the periods that he has stated, our balance of trade certainly needs to be strong. Because in those periods, we had African minerals, we have London mining. We were exporting. That was why I stated our export GDP. Maybe I need to re-emphasize what I said. I said export GDP. Export GDP is our total GDP earning from our exports. Import GDP is your total spending on import. So when I say export and import, and when I stated figure, let me read for you. It said total export. This was Mamoru Kagbo's budget. I'll just read the line. It said total export amounted to 436.7 million during the first half of 2017. So we are saying, I cannot come to public television and quote figures that are not in existence. That's the first. Secondly, I heard Cyril spoke about Liberia being stabilized or Liberia bringing. The viewer should also understand, Cyril should have said that Liberia, the US dollar is a legal tender in Liberia. The American dollar is a legal tender. They use it like.
And it's the same here now.
No, it's not the same here. It is not the same here. You know, when you do economic analysis,
right,
you should be plain so that the viewers understand the parameters you're using. My uncle has said we are using two currencies in Sierra Leone, the old and the new. In Liberia, the dollar is a legal tender. In Liberia, dollar is a legal tender. So, which means you can transact in the US dollar with no recourse to foreign exchange. So, the Liberian economy, in terms of inflationary pressure, comes from not just prices. Foreign exchange is a major driver of inflation. And between the period when it was quoting 42%, today, our inflation figures are coming down because government is implementing deliberate policies. Yeah. He also spoke of parliament being corrupt. It was good on the side of the SLPP that a member of parliament in the SLPP could stand up and say this is not right. But the current running mate of the APC, Chelno Ramadama Juba, who was deputy speaker and he was chairman of the Public Account Committee and is also a lawyer, he knows what subsection 5 of section 119 says about debating the Auditor General's report. He has never in the APC, even though they were 2 members short of 2/3 majority, he has never for once attempted to table the Auditor General's report. In fact, the Auditor General's report of 2016 and 17 under the APC were not even tabled in Parliament. They were tabled when we came into governance, which shows that in the SLPP, when it is right, we call it out. When it is wrong, we call it out because we believe in financial transparency. He also spoke about corruption, about the issue of governance and corruption. President Nkrumah reported in this agenda for prosperity. He said in 5 years, they were only able to collect 10 billion from the government or from the corrupt, and the inherited government from the SLPP. In 5 years, we have been able to collect 45 billion from the APC members, settling their corrupt practices. That is not only it. People have abandoned their properties. So it shows that financially, what we are doing for Sierra Leone is in the right trajectory. And I would also say that you should give me twice the amount of time you give in Berete and Django because they're on the same page. They're on the same boat. Because when you're doing economic analysis...
That's a false accusation.
No, I am saying...
Go ahead, continue.
Saying when you're doing economic analysis, your economic analysis should lean towards a deliberate analysis of what the trend is. But if you're saying the government is relying on the Ukraine-Russia war, whilst Ukraine is still exporting grain, the major importer from Ukraine, that is why the broker of the deal between Ukraine and Russia was Turkey. Because Turkey is the number 1 exporter of grain in the world.
No, sir.
No, I'm coming. I mean, of wheat flour in the world. So, sorry, it's wheat flour, of wheat flour in the world. So, getting grain from Russia and Ukraine through that means would give them additional competitive advantage in their wheat exports. That is why, when we gave the flour mill to a local investor, he stated it in the contract that in the first 2 years it will be importing from Turkey. It is only in Sierra Leone for the first time that flour has gone up to 1,200,000 and it has come down to 700,000. These are all deliberate policies of the government to stabilize the economy.
Let's move on. We have one more issue to look at, gentlemen. And David Gami Wilson will soon be joining us with some of the messages that our online viewers have sent in. Many of them are in. Let's look at employment, what the APC and the SLPP are putting forward. The APC is saying intensify efforts in job creation and the establishment of pathways for every adult, especially the youth and women, to earn a living wage. Through sustainable cross-sectoral interventions, we shall collaborate with local and international partners to create jobs while simultaneously reforming and capacitating the civil and public service to prioritize service delivery. And I'm sure my producer will soon get that for us on screen. The SLPP is saying Youth Employment Scheme, a presidential initiative to create 500,000 jobs for the youth in 5 years. Yes, it's a presidential initiative to harness the energy of Sierra Leone's youth by creating 500,000 jobs in the next 5 years. These jobs will include skilled and unskilled, long-term and seasonal jobs across all sectors. This will be done by providing incentives to the private sector to hire, train, and upskill, especially young women and girls. Abdullah Beriti, intensifying efforts in job creation and the establishment of pathways for every adult, especially the youth and women, to earn a living wage. What exactly is the APC pushing forward here?
We believe in human development, but that human development, the young people are very key in that. We don't believe the young people should only come in when it is elections time. You give them a cap, you give them a t-shirt. We believe in real policies. And those policies, of course, is what you do intentionally to create jobs for particularly the young people. Because this issue of microfinance for women, it has been overused in this country. How do you do real growth? The first thing which is inextricably linked to the economy is to diversify the economy. You look inward. The dependency syndrome, all the time looking outward for whatever support you can get. What do you do internally to make sure once there is peace? That way, if you want to do an intentional intervention in the diversification, let's say agriculture, what is the comparative advantage to have PSR? What is the comparative advantage to increase support in the cocoa and coffee production? Which, of course, we can be able to export to bring in the much needed foreign exchange. What about locally grown rice? So that we can reduce the importation from Thailand and other countries. Once you do that, who are going to be the drivers? The young people are very much positioned. I remembered a couple of years ago, there was a farm along Lonsar and McKinney. It was a women's program. They said, Mr. Berete, we had you on the radio. You said the president is interested in that. I went there. I saw it myself. And what happened? We were able to support them. And when by just that singular intervention, for that local area around Yenkesa and Masungbong, they were able to increase their yields. Imagine if we were to cascade that at the national level. And this is where we believe the marine resources. We know we can control the exclusive zone of our marines so that we don't interfere where the fish do breed, and we can control that. But at the same time, though, how do you empower artisanal fishing so that there will be local consumption? At the same time, we'll be able to export to neighboring countries. And the most important thing here, you look at agriculture, you look at animal husbandry, the protein for Sierra Leoneans is very key because it is linked to the health of the people as well. And when you do that, it is not a crime for somebody with a political science degree, with a history degree, to say, you know what, I can boast of having a farm. And already we have seen an example in Dr. Samura Kamara. With all his PhD in economics, we saw him doing farming in Kamakuye. I think that is an example of leadership whereby there will be a commitment to diversify this country and position the youth. But for us, in positioning the young people, do not treat them like demagogues, whereby you only come and lord it over them. Include them in the development of the strategy. That way, if it fails, you cannot be a divisive government to say it is the young people versus the government. But once you include them, we can transcend beyond the mantra of saying youth are future leaders. They could be leaders.
The living wage, what's the context?
Living wage, that is why when people compare the prices in Guinea for rice, they didn't come about what is the real income, the disposable income of Sierra Leoneans. To this time, our minimum wage is 800,000 euros in this country. We met it at about 25,000, paltry. We said, no, it has to be 500. The SLPP came, they topped it to 800, the minimum wage. But again, when you look at 800,000 right now, and for a teacher who earns, let's say, 1.2 million leones, with a family of 3, transportation coming from Kisii to come to U building, will that be a living wage for them? Absolutely no. And this is where, for us, how do we make sure the real GDP growth rate in the country, whereby, as Honorable Tawa was talking, it is like the economics, the figures he was quoting, it's like Sierra Leoneans are like they are from outer space. There is massive suffering in this country. The people are suffering, and that is why, for us, we believe when we come, we should be able to establish a private sector. You work with the foreign direct investors in this country, and the indigenous business people, they are very quick. That way they can advise government. We take the leadership to say, you know what, if you do ABC, there will be fiscal discipline in the economy, and there will be wastage control. That way, we don't have to even go for another 20 million credit from the IMF at the leak of a transition when the APC was coming into governance.
Honorable Ibrahim Tawa, you are promising 500,000 jobs in the next 5 years. How and where?
To start with, because we are not reliant on economic bailout like Ghana and the Ivory Coast. Running the state is a business. Like President Koma rightly said, what he did not tell us is what would be the financial of the performance of the state. But we know now that at the end of the 11 years period, the financial was a dismal loss. Now, before we come to what we are going to do to get to 500,000, I would always and at all times tell you what we are doing to show that, yes, the path we've taken is the path to create 500,000 jobs.
New jobs?
New jobs. New jobs. If you look at the number of concessionary agreements that we've signed in establishing new factories in Sierra Leone, you would realize that, yes, the path to getting to 500,000 is not only reliant on factories. If you go to Hastings, you would see a massive factory coming up, a cement factory that would also complement, because what Dangote is doing is a factory, yes, but the real employment, it's a ship coming from somewhere, and the ship will be connected to a tunnel, and the tunnel will funnel in the clinker, and the clinker will be bagged in Sierra Leone and sold. That is not the factory that is currently ongoing, that is currently being constructed at Hastings. It is going to be a process where everything will come in, like Leosem, and they will process it. The process will be here, which means you are going to need additional hands. You know, I've had somebody, when we were discussing, he said, oh, cold storage are shut down. But we've never, when cold storage was here, during the holidays, we would be moving helter and skelter looking for soft drink. But today, we don't find soft drink. We have enough soft drink factories. That is because of deliberate concessionary trade agreements to bring in more factories. And the cement factory currently ongoing at Hastings is not the only cement factory that this government has brought in. There are a number of others that are currently working on either startup or not. So it shows that our effort is paying off. In terms of agriculture, I told you that the government provided 60 billion for 5,000. And the government says we are going to deliberately invest in agriculture to feed Sierra Leone. And if you're feeding, like people say, oh, bread and butter. If you're giving bread and butter is not to buy bread and open it and apply it or rub in butter and clothes. No, bread and butter is put money in people's pockets. So when you invest in agriculture, it means you are going to create job employment for a huge chunk of Sierra Leone. Because in Sierra Leone, when you say youth employment, everybody look at Freetown. No, the youth are also in the provinces. So when we invest in agriculture, agriculture is going to be a major driver of that job creation. If you look at the mines, By the time they were leaving, London Mining had closed. And it was Frank Timis, who was at Africa Minerals, a friend of former President Nkrumah, that came out and bought London Mining and formed Marampa. Nobody knew to date what was the cost of that deal. It was a shady agreement. Nobody knew. After a while, he sold it to SL Mining. And when SL Mining came in, because Frank Timis was a close ally of the government, what happened? They entrenched a number of strange clauses in that agreement that restrained this government to the point that we had to shut down the process. And we restarted. And when we restarted, at this point, for the first time in Sierra Leone's history, a government had 10% in a mining company, which means we are beginning to control our destiny. It is the same. The constitutional agreement we've given to King Ho. They are moving faster than expected. Now, as we speak, they are mining 62 high-grade iron ore, which means they've also received additional funding. He said we are reliant on the IMF and the World Bank, whilst the APC was working with the Chinese. We've received more Chinese support than the APC, even the APC themselves. The second Juba Bridge at Lumley was constructed by the Chinese. The dump trucks was given by the Chinese. Currently, we are engaging with the Chinese investment to get the Lunge Bridge going. And if you look at what we are doing, the Chinese have invested additional funding to King Ho. And King Ho is the largest employer. King Ho has employed twice the number of people that London Mining and Africa Mineral was employing combined. And we have also given other new mining concessions. In terms of tourism, it is only under the SLPP in difficult times that we provided salary support to people in the hospitality sector. If you go to the beaches now, if you go around the country, you will realize a real boom in hospitality. Sierra Leoneans are now leaving their homes, going to restaurants to buy food. Sierra Leoneans are now leaving their homes, go to a hotel during the weekends to spend time with their families. Yes, things are difficult. Things are hard, and things are hard across the world. In UK, people are alternating between buying heat and buying food, which shows the difficulty and the hard times is across the world, but deliberate government policy. And my uncle has reiterated the point of the IMF 20 million like 3 times. The IMF 20 million is a serious show of government prudent, effective, and deliberate financial policy in managing the economy in difficult times.
Quickly, Cyril, both parties, job creation initiatives.
When you look at these arguments, I am still saying, I'm wondering whether the picture being painted by Tawa is of Sierra Leone, or perhaps it's the US that we are actually living in Sierra Leone. He was speaking about grain, about Turkey. Turkey, let me remind you, it's not even among the top 10 grain exporters in the world.
No, I did not say grain. I corrected myself. I said
okay, continue yourself.
The deal because they are the largest exporter of wheat flour. And the wheat flour comes from the grain. So they want to benefit from the grain produced and exported by Ukraine and Russia.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me go ahead, because the point is that they are far away from it. Now, you spoke in glowing terms about the economic strides that you have made, but the issue I still stress is that, how much relevance do all of those strides you've spoken about change the lives of Sierra Leoneans at this day, at this time, at this point, when we are suffering from major inflationary pressures, where the dollar continues to rise against the Leone, where we continue to place extreme emphasis on importing for the last 5 years. This government has a consistent policy. This government has a consistent policy.
40 years, Sierra Leone has been a major import.
Mr. Chairman, can you kindly protect me? For the last 5 years, you watch every budget speech, which I have been looking at. It was a mere policy of building up the importing cartel over the local production base. It is one in which they were giving incentives and tax holidays to importers over those.
Is this a new initiative?
Production. Now, I want to challenge them that in your manifestos, you've clearly said, both sides, that in fact, we have to create a local entrepreneurial base where local investors are also made part of the economy. Please, guys, do it. We, the local business people, we need support from the government to be able to compete with these investors. Because nowadays, Samuel, the world has moved from globalization to one of nationalization. So I want to appeal to you, live up to your statement that we have to create a local business class that can compete with foreign investors. And you made a mention of one thing which I was very much impressed about, Ibrahim, that government is planning to have stakes in the mining sector, in other words, to have shares in those sectors. Because as we know, it's all 1% of royalty, 2% there. We have to have a government policy from the APC and from your government that would have larger and greater stake in the key sectors of the economy, such that we have to make money ourselves, rather than having these left out. But however, and my final point on this, the IMF $20 million support, when you look at the specification for it, it is not about supporting the government's economic agenda. It is one that to ensure they mobilize revenue to pay debts.
Right.
If you look at it very carefully, Samuel, it is not about supporting, no. It's about ensuring you arrange your fiscal space to ensure you increase revenue to pay our debts.
All right.
How long are we going to be on that?
Let's quickly join David Gemi Wilson for some of the messages our online viewers have been sending. Good evening, David. What are some of the messages I'm seeing? Already, first, before you start reading, we have to apologize to our viewers that time is never our best of friend. We're being dangerously chased by time, so we'll not be able to go through many of your messages. You will have to forgive us. Let's take the few that time would permit us, and we'll have to take some of the comments from members of the live audience.
Yes, thank you very much, Samuel. And we also want to apologize to our viewers because there are so many messages.
Right, hundreds of them.
Paid your viewers who will not take less than 2 or 3 of them. Our first question here is saying from Abubakar Rashid. My question is that, do we have the relative skills to meet the investors' demand? Because we saw what happened when African Minerals was in operation in Sierra Leone. That is from Abu Bakar. Doreen is saying, what was the benefit of changing petrol to liter, GC to WAS, tool payment, all created by bad politicians? And that from Doreen will take one because of time. The reverse is the truth and the obvious, all fair minds and objective people. Sheku Swari says we are still not getting, well, it's a concern that they want to get AYV from across the globe. There are so many messages. Like I said, we cannot take all of them because of time. Abubakar is saying there is progress on that already. Miltimaga is currently offering all these relative skills, offering in Sierra Leone. So getting investors will help the Sierra Leoneans. And Elizabeth Masako says, Mr. Tawa, could you explain President Bill's $40 billion United States project? Because when the audit report was, and that project in Potloko as well. And Albert Kokai says the APC man in the studio is, well, we cannot stick that. We cannot stick that. And please tailor your comments to the conversation in the studio. Well, because of time, we cannot take more messages.
Thank you.
Samuel.
Thank you very much. So, David, as we prepare to get the comment from the live audience, and please would ask the members to please stand up and just say your name, and you have a minute, please, because of time. So, as we prepare for that, let me just take this message from Usman Tholi Toure. For decades, our economy has been strategically less diversified, with no clear pathway to sectoral diversification. Key economic diversification is based on CSC priorities such as agriculture, agro-processing, tourism, and mining. Let's quickly join members of the live audience. You please stand up, say your name, and you make your contribution in a minute, please. Please stand up, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Good evening and good evening to our viewers. My name is Mohammed Elba. Let me first of all start with the economy. I think it is important that when we talk about the economy, it is important for us to look at the root causes, because no government, in its right senses, will prepare a manifesto, share that manifesto across the country, and that manifesto definitely resonates with the aspirations of the people who got elected, and at the end of the day, you do nothing, right, to ensure that you alleviate the suffering of the people. So when we talk about the economy, it is important also for us to talk about the root causes. Mainly, all the panelists have agreed that, yes, indeed, Sierra Leone is an importing nation since time immemorial. We have been importing 90% of the goods and services that we use in Sierra Leone. So efforts being made by successive governments to ensure we reduce the importation rate is what we should be discussing as a country. So to just blame the current government, especially in importing goods and services, I think it's not fair to a very large extent. Right. Like the high cost of living, for example, the high cost of prices. Fuel. We don't produce fuel in Sierra Leone. The cost of 1 barrel of fuel in 2017 it's not the same amount in 2023. The cost of freight is no longer the same. You go and check out. And if people go and buy, let's say, for example, it was $28 per barrel in 2016, and in 2022, it is $48.7 a barrel. Do you expect those people to come and sell the same price?
All right.
And that is the same for every other commodity that has been imported in Sierra Leone.
Thank you.
Also on corruption.
Quickly, we have to move on, please. We don't have time.
Samuel, somebody was talking about corruption. This government, we have passed the corruption under the Transparency International for 5 consecutive years. 5 consecutive years. It's an unprecedented feat for any government to pass the corruption perception index for 5 consecutive years.
Okay, we have to move on. I'm afraid. Forgive me, we have to move on.
All right,
please, can we get the next? Please just stand up, say your name, and tell us exactly what's your point.
Yeah,
right.
Sorry. My name is Musa Kimbo. I work for the Leone newspaper. I'm also part of the APC media team.
Go ahead.
My question is to Honorable Tawa. First of all, the SLPP came to power on the platform of fixing the economy, and you have food security as one of the pillars of your manifesto. And you are mentioning Chinese help, Chinese assistance to this government, but you did not mention a ship of rice, the aid that came in, and in sincerity, talking about food security, and I think that should be mentioned as part of the Chinese efforts to this country, and that was in contention, and many top brass were also in the limelight for that. So I don't know how you can explain. To come to the matter really is, I don't know if you've been taking bold steps in creating a kind of internal resource mobilization and empowering local farmers like for a sustainable food security without relying on imports, which we have to pay a lot of foreign exchange for, which we don't have the necessary exports to pay. And as a result, it will affect our currency and our economy. So if you are really serious about food security, I don't know where has it landed us in this present situation, where a bag of rice is like 700,000, even locally produced products like palm oil, pepper, onions. They are way above the top.
Thank you.
And I don't know how you can explain that in economic terms.
Thank you very much. Yes, quickly, please stand up and just go on.
I'm Ishmael Bayo. I want to speak briefly on President Bio's human capital development, especially the free quality school education, and also his next agenda, which is agriculture, do feed Salon. In 2018, President Bio campaigned right around this country on giving Sierra Leoneans the free quality education. He has earned that reputation and credibility. He's achieved that. Wherever he's campaigning today, it is a testament that he has achieved that. And his next agenda is feed salon agriculture, which is known by any SLPP and even anybody, all Sierra Leoneans. They will tell you that President Bio's next agenda is Feed Africa. I have attended meetings with the president where he chaired during the Feed Africa Summit in Dakar, Senegal. He was so much passionate about agriculture. And when Sierra Leone was presenting the agricultural package compact for Sierra Leone to earn some money, about 40 billion from the Africa Development Bank. The Africa Development Bank were very much impressed by our agricultural compact. So it's a long vision of the president that he has educated Sierra Leoneans. When you take care of the mind, you have to take care of the tummy as well. And agriculture doesn't just mean when we are well fed, it brings foreign reserve economy up.
Thank you very much. And that's all time for us.
We come back to the main studio. We have about 6 minutes to round off this conversation, gentlemen. So we have 2 minutes each. And I'll start off with you, Abdullahi. Why should Sierra Leoneans vote in the SLPP?
You mean the APC?
Sorry, the APC instead of the SLPP.
Thank you.
Forgive me.
The reason being,
Go ahead.
the reasons are very obvious.
Yeah.
In our One Nation manifesto, the first key pillar is to address and bring in national unity, cohesion, so that we'll be able to unite this country after the divisive politics that is being perpetuated by the SLPP government. And that will cascade into addressing the economy, which we discussed very elaboratively. Because at the end of the day, when we come in with fiscal discipline, when we come in to abolish the two currencies in our economy to instill consumer confidence, and we make sure we diversify the economy to the point that we try to do a reduction in the importation, which is stressing the dollar, and also the de-dollarization of the economy. And of course, how do we make sure that we control corruption, which has been also linked to the many overseas travel of the president? How do we make sure we curtail that? And the issue of human rights is very key. You cannot talk about creating jobs for the young people when you look at since 2018 to now, the number of young people that this government has killed, and that is a complete paradox. And this is where we as a government, after we read the U.S. State Department report on human rights, and we read the Amnesty International report, it became very clear that amidst the suffering of the people of this country, their voices are being silenced. There are huge human rights concerns. There is what we call lack of human security. And you cannot create jobs for the young people if the young people who are part of the vulnerable class in this country, whenever they raise issues of concern because of the economy, all you can get is to unleash bullets on them, to kill them. And I call on the president to come out as the campaign is continuing, to come out very clearly and condemn all those killings that have happened in this country under his watch.
Thank you. Honorable Antawa?
Well, it is but obvious that the president is the commander-in-chief. And it is that president that is responsible for the security, safety, and well-being of all Sierra Leoneans. So if a Sierra Leonean, under a particular government regulation that restricts a certain amount of boats to go out at sea, decide to break that rule, and when they are stopped, they come and begin to burn police station, government infrastructure, and you say government cannot stop them, and in the process, lives were lost. What I don't like is, policemen, are they not Sierra Leoneans? Policemen were killed at Subo. The APC is not saying that. Government money, government investments in poles imported from other countries were taken to Togo for electrification. Those poles were burnt down, all of them. Nobody is condemning that. So what are we saying? I have also heard about the presidential travel being mentioned by my uncle like 7 times. That is because the APC, in their diversification challenge, one of it was, under tourism, was Sierra Leone international image. This president has changed the image of Sierra Leone. So what has happened? Places where President Nkrumah was not invited before, because our international image has changed. Now President Bio is being invited. As at yesterday, he has just received the International Civil Aviation Authority examination, preliminary examination report. They've examined Sierra Leone in 2014 and 2016. In both of those instances, we failed miserably with 18 and 14%. In this examination, because of he has rebranded Sierra Leone, we have an international airport that was promised by President Nkrumah. He could not fulfill it. In page 97 of the Agenda of Prosperity, I will give you specific reference. He could not fulfill it. This president has done it without money coming from the coffers. So our image has changed. Now we are scoring 83%, which means Sierra Leone is on the path of moving to the next level. And Sierra Leoneans cannot go back to the periods when the APC was formed in divisiveness. The APC was born out of division because they did not believe in unity. Shaka Stephen broke out of Lancaster, came and formed the election before independence movement that transitioned into the APC. And since then, Sierra Leone has not seen peace. And let the people of Sierra Leone know that, like President Bio will say every day, the APC is not good for themselves and they're not good for this country.
Right. Thank you. Sil Django, what are your parties?
I want to use this opportunity to call on both sides to preach political tolerance, to preach peace. Democracy is not war. It's a battle of ideas. And I want to also focus on the ECSL, the Electoral Commission, to do a thorough forensic auditing of its whole process to ensure that those who go into man the election process are capable, they understand the importance and the fear in doing their duties. I want to call on all those who are talking about tomorrow, that there will be this and that. For God's sake, we need peace in this country. Even the international system would expect that we put peace at the forefront, because if we mess up with the peace, it will be disaster for this country. So I hope we are all moving towards peace, and we're going to vote. In the next 14 days' time, there will be the elections. We go to vote and come back peacefully and happily. And whoever wins should be able to be magnanimous to the loser for the sake of peace. And it's our beloved Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We can talk this now, Crew. So, with all the calls, social media calls about tomorrow, make one Macedonia also, we don't decide basically as people, we like peace. We want to enjoy every now and then when we get the opportunity, we say, make we all go about with normal business. Because the president don't say, instead we'll go around as the fountain of honor. We'd also hear some talks from opposition politicians where they say, let everybody go about their normal business, because now we want for seed. And make sure, say, as we head to the June polls, we'll all be peaceful. Make we not fight we self again. Salon no one dandy. So this is not the message. Do you tomorrow? No man go about normal business. You get for go work, go to your office. You get for go school, go to school. We will get for insurance, we go bola for me something rap, make we go do them. So at the end of the day, we go be peaceful and we'll get rank for go. The one that the politicians, they will go, the APC, the SLPP, we then go for go campaign, and the other parties, they don't go campaign peacefully. This is not the country, and this not the society we want for. See, until then, the show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Weisbangu, and up next is our AYV Primetime News. Take care of yourself and have a lovely night. Bye-bye.